Hello, friends. Welcome to the Friday Conversation, episode 105. We'll be wrapping up our month of February. Be talking about books and movies and traumatizing movies. So we'll get into it. But Jared, will you start us off with an introduction?
Hi, I'm Jared. I run the Fantasy Thinker YouTube channel and often can be found on the Page Chewing forums.
And Paromita.
Hello, everyone. My name is Paromita. I like to read books in a variety of genres, and I also recently started watching movies and maybe some TV. So excited to talk about that.
So now you're gonna take over the. You're gonna feed us all in movies too now.
After today, I might.
So Jared, do you want to start us off with what you've been reading and how's your month been?
Pretty good. Considering how short it's been this month, we still got 5 days left, but I finished The Spear Cuts Through Water by Simon Jimenez. I was doing a read along with that, and that was pretty fun. Pretty good book. I think you must have read that, right, Paromita? Yeah.
I have.
Do you like it? Or?
Magical realism, surrealism is not usually for me.
Yeah, I can see that
me.
if that's not your thing. But I liked it. I liked the style, and I liked the kind of second person narration that went into that. So that was kind of interesting and fun. Steve, we finished Stories of Your Life by Ted Chiang.
It was mercifully over.
It's mercifully over. Yeah. Never seen such a clear-cut case of short stories that are too long in just about every instance in that book. Some great ideas, but really just too long. And that was strange because it's like, I don't know. We've read other books where they have a great idea and they extend it into a novel, and it's not much of a problem. But for some reason, yeah. So it was okay. We also finished Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer, and that was pretty cool. Really liked that a lot. And I finished Lord of Light by Roger Zelazny, and I had a blast with that one too. That was a lot of fun. And that's part of our sci-fi Masterworks read along here on Page Chewing. So that was a great book. And we finished The Fade Out by Brubaker and Phillips. That's outstanding. The graphic novel. And I read a couple of short stories called Returns, which goes with the book that wouldn't burn. It's in that universe. And that's what I finished. Still in the middle of Grand Conspiracy. Jenny Wirtz's fifth book, The Wars of Light and Shadow. And I've about almost 200 pages into Dust of Dreams, my reread of Malazan Book of the Fallen. And 2/3 of the way through Dune.
Jeez.
doing that read along with Angela from the Unicorns Read. And I'm almost halfway through a nonfiction book called Following Caesar, which is this historian who's doing a travelogue of following Caesar's path through Italy and then through the Balkans, and he's like he's finding the places that are still, you can still see some of the actual historical or architectural stuff from 2,000 years ago, and So it's pretty cool. He's kind of detailing that. It's a little different than my usual nonfiction reading, but it's short though. So
do you have does it take an adjustment period for you to go from fiction to nonfiction?
No, not really. I read magazines too with a lot of nonfiction articles. So, but history especially is not much of an adjustment because history can be a great story in and of itself, and so as long as if you take that story approach to it, it's it can be just as rewarding as a fictional, especially history books that have like a big picture type history book. You can almost treat that as an epic novel, epic fantasy type thing, if without the dragons. And but so it's all how you approach it, I guess. I don't read history books anymore to analyze stuff. I just read it for interesting information, and I read it for the story of humanity, and that's how I approach it. I guess other people could approach it in a more analytical way, but I don't. And we started The Authority for the second book in Vandermeer's Southern Reach trilogy, so that's fun. And what else? And I read a select bunch of comics. So,
on your reread of Malazan, are you noticing a lot more in your second read, or are you
absolutely?
Is it a different experience?
It is. It's a completely different experience. I am absolutely. I'm getting even more out of it than I did the first time. And I don't know if I can say that about everything, but definitely with Malazan. I mean, I got more out of I did a reread of Lord of the Rings one time, and I got more out of it when I reread that one too. I'm getting more out of Dune. That's a reread for me too. But the last time I read it was like 20 years ago, so that's quite a bit more difference than something that you're rereading. Well, I guess I don't know. I guess Malazan was 10 years ago, so it's kind of the same, I guess. But really good books. You catch more stuff. That's I don't really do many rereads other than Malazan and I did Lord of the Rings and now Dune, but I'm surprised at how much I'm enjoying it, like even more than the first time.
And we watched True Detective season 4.
Yeah, that's right. We're doing shows too. Yeah. Yeah. What a mixed bag. There was some strong opinions on our podcast there.
No. Yeah, I can say that.
Yeah.
Yeah, the finale was something.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah. That's funny. And I'm trying to think of what else I've watched the past month, but not much really. That's pretty much it as far as I haven't been really glued to anything on TV lately. Other than that.
It seems like TV, there was a lot of really great stuff maybe 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Seems like it kind of hit a peak, and then the quality, I feel like it's been kind of dipping a little bit.
Well, I wonder if we're getting the hangover from the strike,
Oh, it could be.
I wonder if that's, part of it. They just don't have as much stuff right now.
It could be.
Yeah. So that's it, right? That's enough, right?
It's quite a bit. It's quite a bit. I don't know how you manage so many different Wars of Light and Shadow, Malazan, the other fantasy books you're reading. That's a lot.
Yeah, it is. I blame Vasha. She talks me into a lot of this stuff. So
it's always Varsha's fault.
But yeah, and I throw in short stories here and there and mix it up a bit. But I didn't. Maybe it's because I'm watching less TV these days that I'm able to take more in on the reading side. And to be honest, I think I probably prefer it that way.
Use your imagination more, less of it's more interacts. It's more to be present.
Yeah, it's more. What's the word I'm looking for? It's more active entertainment instead of inactive entertainment. I don't know, but there's another word. There's another word I'm looking for that.
Yeah, it's my mind's failing me too. Yeah, it's just a different experience.
It is. Yeah.
So, Paromita, are you reading as much as you were before, or is your movie watching taking over your reading time?
Taken over a bit, but I'm reading shorter books. So at least this year I've been reading a lot of shorter books. So it's about the same. So far, it's about the same.
So what made you get into movies? What was it that...
I think I wanted to... I always liked watching movies, but then I just stopped, I think, for 3-4 years. And I used to actually like going and watching movies in the theater, but then I stopped. So anyway, I think somebody... two people on Discord, two different Discord servers I'm on, told me that, instead of this, it seems like you're just getting through books to chase that high, and maybe if you had another hobby and you diverted a bit, it would make you enjoy your reading a bit more as well, instead of like the moment you finish a book, you're going to the next book, and then so on and so forth, because I wasn't having a very good reading time. So that's what made me get into movies. And with respect to movies, one person who was giving me recommendations told me this, that it's actually interesting to give me recommendations because I'm almost a blank slate. I have no idea what has come out. I have no idea who the actors or actresses are. I have no idea what I like also. So it's not like books where I would look at the synopsis and I would look at reviews and say, oh, I'm not going to like it, or have some preconceived notion. In movies, I have no preconceived notion. I don't even look at the synopsis. If someone tells me something, they're like, Paromita, try this. I'm like, okay. It's much more free flowing.
Are you finding it? Is it a different kind of enjoyment, different kind of experience to watch?
Yes. It's been a mixed. It's been a mixed bag, but yeah, in general, I also think like movies. I've only DNF one movie, so I've not stopped watching something because I dislike it. Even if something is possible, it still works. I think the audiovisual factors and everything, there's enough there to keep me engaged that I don't get bored as easily, maybe. So it is different, very much different.
So what did you DNF? What movie did you DNF?
The one I DNF'd was Princess Mononoke. It's an anime. And I think I got about 10 or 15 minutes into it, and it's a very highly recommended film by the Purple Bookworm, who has a really nice taste. I was very sad as well because it's one of her favorite anime films, but I was not getting anything from it, so I stopped that one. It's a Studio Ghibli film, I think. I think it's a Miyazaki film, actually. I didn't even know who Miyazaki was. They're like, you have to watch these Miyazaki films. Like, okay.
So what movies did you watch this month?
I watched quite a lot. So I think I watched 20 or 24.
Wow.
Jeez.
Let me check. Yeah, I think about 20 or 24. Out of them, 4 were anime and rest are regular. And then there was one TV show for which I tried one episode and I didn't like it. It's not for me. It's called Black Sails.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pirates. Like I think Susanna Imaginarius, who is an author and who was on the forum, she said that you give it a try, and also another person said that Paromita, maybe you give it a try. Even if I don't like nautical stuff and I don't like pirates, and it was just not my thing. But the movies that I really liked were, one was Pan's Labyrinth, which I saw fairly recently. I saw the Grand Budapest Hotel, which was very nice. I like this film called Good Will Hunting, which I didn't know about also, but it was very nice. I watched a movie called Alien that was very, very good. It was brilliant. And then other movies which were also really, really good were Hereditary, which is I would say psychological horror. And there was also a movie called The Thing, the 1982 one, because I was explicitly told to watch the 1982 version, and I watched. I would also say that is psychological horror with some speculative elements, you can say. It was a very good movie. There are other films I watch as well. Like I watched The Witch. I watched a movie called District 9. It was interesting. What did I watch? Oh, I watched Arrival. I liked Arrival. So this is actually based on a short story which Jared and Steve both were referring from that collection. It's in fact the title, the story of life. I liked the movie. Didn't really like the ending.
Oh.
So, but I liked the movie. I watched Interstellar, and I usually like Nolan. I like that. Again, I did not like the last. There is a particular point where something happens in the movie, and after that, what happens till the end, I didn't really vibe with it. It was not my thing. Annihilation. This is based on Jeff Vandermeer's book. It's an okay movie. I cannot separate the movie from the work. If it's an adaptation, I think it was a terrible misinterpretation of the book. No. So that's why I didn't like it. But it's a good movie, I think. I didn't like Silent Hill, which was again, I thought there's a game based on this particular property, but there's also a movie. I didn't like it too much. And there's a movie called The Descent, which was, well, it's scary. But it didn't scare me too much, because after a point I saw the thrills coming. I think the scariest movie I've probably watched so far is Hereditary, because that sort of it did horror the way I like it. Whereas something like Alien was also very, very good. And there were some other movies I watched, like Emily, which was not for me. The Fountain, not for me. The Dark Knight by also a Nolan film actually, and not for me. Midsommar, which is also by the same director who made Hereditary, but it was not for me. That's a very personal thing. I don't like cults at all. So if you don't like cults, stay away from Midsommar. Maybe, I don't know. It was very, very disturbing, not in a good way. And then the movie that I just finished watching today before I came for this show was this film called Infinity Pool. It was just so horrifying. I get what the director was trying to show, but the visuals were too traumatizing for me. It's not my thing. Like anything with blood and very graphic sexual stuff, and I don't want to spoil too much or anything, and it's just that icky vibe which got exacerbated, and the film doesn't really let up, so it was tough. The best movies that I watched were in anime, actually. There's a movie called Grave of the Fireflies, which I gave 10 on 10. It was perfect. I don't have anything to say that, oh, maybe this could have been. It was perfect. And then another movie which I also really liked was Spirited Away.
Oh, I like that. I like
Also
that.
an
Yeah, Spirited
anime.
Away was good. Yeah.
Yeah. There are two other movies I watched. One is Garden of Words. I liked it, but not too much. And then one which I didn't really like was Nausicaa. That's all.
Have you seen the Berserk anime?
I have not. If like, I'm a bit scared. I'm aware of it, but I'm a bit scared because the artwork for that is so perfect in my mind in what it's trying to do that if it, I'm going to be so mad if it doesn't. Do you recommend it?
I haven't seen it yet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
After you see it, I will. If you vouch for it, then I'll go for it.
Yeah, I'm afraid to get spoiled before I finish the manga.
No, yeah, absolutely.
Well, you've been busy. What did you read?
So let me tell the numbers and then I'll tell some highlights. So total, I read 59 books so far. Out of those, just one book which I really liked enough to give 5 stars, which is a new read. 2 were rereads, so those I'm not mentioning. The one which I really liked and I gave 5 stars to was Green Mile by Stephen King. It was a very moving. I really liked it. Other than this, some good books that I read. I read this book called The Body Snatchers, which was, you can say science fiction, you can say speculative fiction. It was a very nice book. I read a book which won the International Booker in 2021 called At Night All Blood is Black by David Diop. I highly recommend it. And again, I would recommend to just go in without reading too much about the book. It's not to get spoiled, but that is written in a particular manner, which I think is very impactful if you go in blind. It's sort of surrealist, but it's not leaning in too much into the surrealist atmosphere. It's using that to, let's say, represent a particular culture or history through a particular perspective. That's about as much as I would give away. I did a buddy read of 7 short stories by Jorge Luis Borges, and the collection was called Library of Babel. That was also actually technically a reread because I've read the stories before. Pet Cemetery by Stephen King, really liked. Really liked that. I really like this book called The Hearing the Trumpet by Leonora Carrington. It's a very short novella. I think it's like 100, 150 pages in that range. And Leonora Carrington was an artist, but she also wrote. She was also a writer, and this is one of her seminal works. So again, this is about an old lady and how do I say this? Do not mess with old ladies. Which was fun. So one theme which I should say is I've been doing this Latin. So initially it was Spanish. I was trying to read world literature and I chose Spanish as the language. And then as I was getting into Spanish literature, because of what happened in history, a big part of Spanish literature is Latin American literature. So then I actually changed the project to Latin American literature, and so a lot of books that I have been reading in January and this month are from that place, what has been translated. So there are a lot of titles. That's why Borges comes up, and there are a lot of other titles. One thing that I started getting into very recently, so it's partly related to King, I guess, but it's also because I'm interested in horror as being done by these some contemporary Latin American authors. And there's this author, Mariana Enriquez. So I read this interview by her where she said that there was a period, she's from Argentina, she's also a journalist. And she said there was a period in Argentina where people were living in such fear, in such uncertainty due to what was happening on the political side. But civilians also were caught in the crossfires. That the only way to process that is through the medium of literature, is for her through horror. And I read two short story collections by her. One is called The Dangers of Smoking in Bed, and the other one is called Things We Lost in the Fire. I really like both of them. I like Things We Lost in the Fire more. Dangers of Smoking in Bed, though it was translated later, it actually came out earlier originally in Argentina, and you can see it's a bit of a new writer sort of thing, but it's still very good short story. The Things We Lost in the Fire is really, really leaning into that. You can almost, and I think it's very universal. So it is not specific to the geographical regime she's writing about, but mainly her experiences or what she has seen, what she knows, those things come into the story. And I really like that, not being too preachy or not being too overt, but nevertheless building in deep theming through horror, because horror is literature, it is serious literature. And the reason why I knew Mariana Enriquez is because her book, she wrote a novel as well, which I've read, which is called Our Share of Night. That was, I think, was shortlisted as well, but definitely longlisted for the International Booker last year. So it was a very good moment to see genre fiction coming into these literary awards. I've always been of the mind that horror is not for me and I don't understand horror, but maybe this can be a inlet into it. So what I don't like is body horror or slasher horror.
I agree.
But that doesn't mean, I mean, horror is such a wide genre, and I'm interacting more with friends, bookworms who read horror much more widely, and they're introducing me to a lot of things that I don't know about. So even within Stephen King's universe, for example, if I would have just blocked out that Stephen King is a horror writer, and like 11/20 to 63 years, but other than that, most of his novels and like they're not for me. But my friends who have actually read all of Stephen King's work, some of them have very kindly been selecting titles that Paromita, you might like this, you might like this. So that's how, and both of them were highlights for this reading month. So I do want to get into a bit more of reading horror literature, and I want to get more into. I'm reasonably satisfied with how I've done with the Latin American reading project. I want to get more into rereading some of the books that I've liked. Other than that, I'm trying to think if I read anything which I want to mention. This is Canadian Mexican, but this book was really good. It's Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia. I want to read more by her as well. She's a very, very good author. In this book that I read. Other than that, I read a few classics, but overall, other than these, it's not been. So if you think about the number of titles I mentioned, maybe 7, 8, the others have not been so good for me, and so it's not been a very good reading month. But I'm happy about the titles that I found. That's it from me.
That's it?
That's it.
Question for both of you, and we talked about this a little bit on the forum, but why do you think horror isn't taken more seriously in a lot of literary circles, on that it isn't kind of given as much weight as other genres?
Is it not? Like, I mean, I know it's not given weight as compared to contemporary literature, but I have no idea how it stacks up against, fantasy or science fiction or what have you. So I wouldn't know the answer to that. I don't know why. Like, I don't know why all those genres are not given their due compared to contemporary literature, because there's so much good stuff out there that should be in the same, it's the same conversation. But I'm not sure. I'm not familiar with the horror genre that much, so I'm not sure how that would stack up against other genres per se.
What do you think, Paromita?
I think you're right, Steve, in that. I mean, again, this is based on anecdotal, not statistical evidence, but I think the most literary, which means that people who primarily read literary fiction or classics are most likely to read science fiction. So that's probably topmost in terms of what gets credibility, what might get nominated for prizes that typically go to literary fiction works. Second, in my opinion, is probably horror. I think fantasy gets the worst rap. And one guess for that would be largely literary fiction is about standalone works.
Right.
Whatever you have to say in a book, usually, I'm not saying, of course, you have many exceptions, but again, those also you can, you have, for example, the greatest modernist novel of the 20th century is In Search of Lost Time, that's 7 volumes. There are many exceptions, you have trilogies and all, but usually it's a single novel that gets nominated for an award, or that gets studied, or it's a particular author maybe. And science fiction does that very well. Of course, you have very long running science fiction series, but even something like the Culture series by Ian M. Banks or Ursula K. Guin with her Hinish cycle, those are connected standalones, but you can read them in any order, and you can choose to read some or not all of them. And these are authors that would be considered literary. I mean, people who don't consider them literary, we can have a conversation, but they would be in that conversation typically for people who read literary fiction. Octavia E. Butler is another person. She did duologies or trilogies, but again, you can read Dawn and stop at that. You can read Parable of the Sower and stop at that. You can read Pattern Master and stop. Sorry, that's the 4th book actually. I forgot. What's the 1st book? Wild Seed. You can read Wild Seed and stop at that. Margaret Atwood. You can read Oryx and Crake, stop at that. You can read just Handmaid's Tale. There's this element in speculative or science fiction whereby, first of all, shorter books, and second of all, standalones. Third of all, an perception that it is more ideas based or theme based as a genre overall. And of course, you have people who want to distance themselves from, because you have pulp science fiction and you have people battling out the space wars and stuff. But there is enough in science fiction going around, and there's enough cross fertilization between literary fiction and science fiction historically, particularly in American literature. I'm not so well versed in how it was in the European scene, that science fiction is taken seriously. Second, I would actually say is horror, because again, horror is not as prone to seriesitis as fantasy is. There are more horror novels, novellas, short story collections, and I don't think long series is as much of a phenomenon in horror, even among current authors. Correct me if you're wrong, Steve, because you read more horror than me. So again, the concept of nominating a single work or is more, and the second thing is horror is intimately related to psyche. It is related to psyche. It is related to the environment. And environment can very easily be taken as something geographical, but also you can incorporate historical elements, you can incorporate cultural elements into the environment. And so it is perhaps easier to make a connection, an allegorical connection with horror than it is for fantasy, because fantasy, a lot of it tends to go into secondary world, a lot of it.
Yeah.
And then, yes, I think the worst rap is reserved for fantasy. Yeah, I can't think of any books other than Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. I can't think if no, I don't think Joanna Mabel's works have even been nominated for book. Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell was one of the rare books which got nominated for. At least it made the Booker long list. I think American Gods was in the conversation at least, but yes, you will find handful of books, and
Yeah.
again these are standalones. So the conversation of these long running series, because fantasy, I mean I have seen people make videos or people make posts asking for fantasy standalones. Perhaps it is a bit more of a rarity than in science fiction and horror. And so I don't know, I mean that is a pure guess as to why it is not taken seriously by the literati. It is what Jared said, it is the same issue that I mean, instead of trying to criticize the literati, I'll say I think it's a question of not having the doors and windows of one's mind open, either individually or as a collective. For example, I thought horror was not for me, and so that does that mean that all horror is not for me? But then I don't want to try and see which horror will be for me, because that takes time and it's not exactly obvious how to search or who to ask. And if you are in a collective or in a community, reading community where you primarily read literary fiction and you talk to other people who read literary fiction, it's much easier to cultivate an attitude, oh, we don't need to go into this genre, than it is to, traverse that genre either historically or uh, just from a wide array of contemporary works and select the gems and sort of ask that question, are we missing out something by totally ruling out this entire body of work which has this label? So I think it could just be ingrained attitudes and maybe a bit of that bias that comes in, that we talk to people who read similar things as us, who review similar things to us, and so we get into this sort of echo chamber. That those are my guesses. What do you think, Steve?
Yeah, I think you made some good points. I now that you mentioned, I do think fantasy does get a bad rap. I think a lot of people see fantasy. I think first, like you mentioned, I think it'd be very intimidating. I think a lot of fantasy books are a lot longer than other genres.
Yeah.
So you can,
yeah, absolutely right.
Because like a thriller, you can pick up a thriller or even like an action type of book, and it's 300 pages. But a fantasy book, you look, most of them are 500 to 700, maybe even more than that. And I think they take a little bit more, and I just think they take a little bit more effort to get into them sometimes, because they are something like Malazan or Prince of Nothing, or even something like Game of Thrones or Song of Ice and Fire can be intimidating to get into, because there's so many characters and you're building a world from the bottom up. And I do think that fantasy has a reputation for some people of being like what the outcasts read, or like like the kind of being associated with nerd culture, but not in a good way.
Yeah. Oh, there's.
No,
Yeah.
I totally agree.
That was definitely the case when I was growing up. That was like definitely looked down upon, just because I was reading fantasy novels and back in the 80s and stuff.
The number of literary fiction booktubers I have seen saying, because I think they have those tag videos, and one question is, what is a genre you don't read at all? The number of people have saying with quite definitely, and again, each to their own, of course, but the derision, It's just like, it's like I don't read fantasy. Like, one thing that I would absolutely not read is fantasy, and I'm like, okay. it's I do think that there is one of my friends on Discord told me this. I agree with this actually. Now that she said that fantasy is actually the most difficult to read, uh, compared to uh, shorter literary fiction novels and all. And I actually think she's right. My ability to handle multiple POVs, or whatever everything else that is being dabbled with, my limit is probably A Song of Ice and Fire. If you go beyond that, I would tend to get lost or just zone out. And it's a lot of commitment, because I think I can be like a single data point case study here. For last 2 months, I've not read anything actually other than Fourth Wing, which was just a fun buddy read with. But I haven't read any fantasy really. The amount of books that you can read, as you said, even mostly literary fiction or short story collections, horror novellas, just in general, even classic novellas, that it takes to get through a dense, immersive secondary world epic fantasy novel. It's unbelievable.
Even Stephen Donaldson mentioned in one of his essays that there's an aversion to having to break down and analyze something that's of a greater length. In academia, there's an aversion to that as well, and fantasy fits into that mold. It's longer, it's complicated, and it like you said with the A Song of Ice and Fire has a ton of POVs, and it has extensive world building, and you have to take all that in order to even attempt any kind of analysis or like that. And like you said, Paramita, that's not even the most complicated and most so it's there is an aversion to delve into those works in academia itself.
Yeah, and I think when you if you're in a bookstore, I don't know, for those of you who still go to bookstores, when you look on the shelf and you see a series, like even like Wheel of Time, and you see what is like 10 books or
14.
I mean, you look at, it's intimidating. It's like, I can't read all those, but I can't read that much. Like, most people don't read the way most of us, like, those of us here read. So I think it's intimidating to see these big fat books, and you just like, that's going to take me forever to get through. So I think it's there's something to be said about the time investment too that's involved, and the amount of mental energy it takes to get into a really dense fantasy book. It's not as as disposable, as digestible as other genres. I mean, like romance, it's I think a lot of people like romance because you can get into it and you can enjoy it, and then it's over, and then you move on to the next one with a whole different set of characters. Even if it's, you kind of know what to expect, it's still like a comfort because you kind of know what you're getting into. And there are different subgenres in romance, but it's they're short and they're enjoyable, and you're done. But with fantasy, it's okay, you got through this 1,000-page book, now read the other 9 of them, and then you'll understand what the first one was about. So it's a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know you just spent 13 hours reading this book. I know it doesn't make sense. Just hang in there. Like it's most people. A lot of people aren't willing to do that, and that's fine. And that's nothing wrong with that. Just I think that's one of the things that kind of I think fantasy would really benefit from standalones, from just 300-400 page books. Just you can get into it and you can get out, and I think that would bring more people in to the genre.
That brings up another conundrum, though, and then how do you create a secondary world in 300 pages?
That's what's tough.
It's tough, really tough.
I guess the thing is, if somebody is interested in epic fantasy, let's say, it's so hard to give a recommendation. In general, if somebody says, I want to get into reading, I want to read a book, it's so hard to give a recommendation for a fantasy book, without, I would usually give them a Neil Gaiman sort of thing where, like try Ocean at the End of the Lane. It's Piranesi.
Yeah.
These sort of things are not terrifying. Okay, Wizard of Earthsea. I mean, now that you mention it, I'm just going to say this a bit. A Wizard of Earthsea it's not, it's secondary world fantasy. It's 200 pages.
Yeah.
I do think there is a bit of editorial leeway that goes on in a lot of epic fantasy series, where it's a bit. I know that one function is immersion, and immersion happens because you spend time in the world. But I have read many books, even the books that I have liked. Let me give a concrete example instead of dissing on something which I haven't liked. Wise Man's Fear. Kingkiller Chronicle by Patrick Rothfuss is a very dear series to me. Wise Man's Fear is 1,000 pages in paperback. Easily, it could have been 700.
I've read that one.
30% is too much. I think 10 to 15% is authorial discretion. It's really not the place of the reader. When 30% is in 1,000-page book, and that's where I think the numbers are just stunning for me mentally. Because if a 100-page book, if it could have been 70, is not the same feeling as a 1,000-page book, which could have been 700.
Yeah.
Just when you go up to that order of magnitude. And as you said, Steve, then you have book after book like that. Burnout is real. And I mean, I confess that I am actually a victim of what you're saying. I can't look at a long fantasy series now. I mean, I look at it and I'm like, how many books are there? Even 3, but if I see if it's 900 pages later, I'm like, I can't do it. I just can't do it. It's like a mental block. So this thing that you're saying, when you go, and I do go into bookstore, I like it a lot, and I see those series and they look very nice. I can't even take it out to look at the at the back cover and read the synopsis. I'm just like, I can't do it. I can't do it. Let's go to the. It's not even the number of books, because now I think there is a move towards. I think Carl Albert, who is an author and who's on our forum, mentioned this once, that there is a bit of hesitation in the post-Stormlight era. I mean, that was the last long one, for publishers to promote a series longer than a trilogy.
Oh, really? Huh.
So they're not going for these long 5 or 7 book series. So it's not even the number of installments, but it's just the width of the book. I look at the width of the book and I'm like,
that's
I can't
interesting, considering how much you read. Like you read, you know.
And I have been told this, that for me that's so strange, because even if it's long, if you spend time on it, you would get through it. It would not take you 1 month, for example, right? And I'm like, I don't know. It's almost like a mental block. If someone tells me you want to read this series, I looked at it and I was like, I can't do this. It's so strange. It's been going on for almost, I would say, 1.5 to 2 months now. I haven't touched anything. I started Red Rising. I read the first book and then I was like, oh my God, there are going to be 7 books. I'm out. It's so strange. And I feel bad as well, because it means that a lot of the communities that I'm part of, I follow what they're reading, but I'm not reading anything with them. Like novella, which is why horror is very reassuring in that sense. Because even as I'm looking up horror writers, I'm looking at past horror writers, a lot of it is short fiction. And a lot of it is, they have novellas. And yes, they have novels, but even the novels are standalone. The only exception I can think of is Clive Barker. Like, he has this 4 or 6 book series, 6 book series, I think, which is got like chonkers. But even then, for example, I think this came up, Imajika is one by Clive Barker, which is on my radar. Even that is 846 pages and it's done. It's nothing compared to some of these behemoths that are around. It's like you pick up the book and it's a brick. I always say it's a good arm workout. Unless you're doing digital or audio. Yeah. Does that happen to you both, by the way? I know Steve asked Jared about alternating between fiction and non-fiction, but do you get a particular genre burnout? For example, would you be able to binge through a 5-book fantasy series? Okay.
I don't know. What about? But, well, I think it would depend on the series and your definition of binge. I think.
Yeah.
One a month, let's say.
I can probably handle that. One a month isn't bad. One a week might be too much. That's yeah.
Yeah.
What about you, Joe?
I never read more than one. Like in the same series, I would never read more than one a month. I always gotta mix it up a little bit. But I don't have. It can be different fantasy though. I don't have genre burnout. I mean, I would switch to a different fantasy series or a different, type of storytelling, because there's a lot of variety within fantasy, and just like there's a lot of variety in horror and science fiction too. So a lot of people in outside genre fiction don't realize that. They think they clump it all into one, but they think everything's Lord of the Rings or whatever. But but there is a lot of variety within the fantasy series, fantasy genre that you can fall back on and really, mix it up a lot. So, that's what I do.
Yeah, I've had fantasy burnout. If I'm reading more than a couple at a time, I'll start, because I think a lot of them have there's just like any other genre. There's similarities throughout different series, so you start to, and for me, I get characters mixed up, or I get places and events and histories mixed up. So if I read too many fantasy books at a time, I need to mix it up with other things like graphic novels, or even like a short story collection or something science fiction, just to break it up a little bit.
Yeah. And I did get burned out a little bit with history books. I actually used to read a lot more nonfiction history in the past before I started BookTube even, and then I was reading at least one history book a month, and so I cut back on that because I was like, it's harder for me to find a history book now that I'm super interested in, because I have a whole huge bookshelf back there, so I've read a lot. So whereas fantasy, I don't know, I just keep finding new and interesting things all the time, and it's like I read a lot of fantasy, but I look back at what is old fantasy and I'm like, how did I not read all these too? There's a lot out there.
There's a ton.
Yeah.
There's a ton out there. Yeah, there's a lot. Too much. And I do wonder, a lot of the, even like self-pub authors that write fantasy, I wonder if there's like almost an expectation that they have to write a long chunker when it doesn't necessarily have to be. I think there's a group of fantasy readers that expect long books, and it's come almost like we expect it to be 600 plus pages. And I wonder if there's pressure to write a long book, to stretch things out, to make it a longer book, to appeal to that group of readers because they love the long. So I don't know. Something we can ask one of our fantasy writing friends one of these days.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the drive was behind that lengthening of the genre in general. I know most of the D&D related books I read back in the 80s, they were generally around 400, so they weren't They weren't the massive tomes we get today. And a lot of the 80s, a lot of the 70s novels were like maybe 300, if that. And they literally they call them pocketbooks because you could fit them in your pocket, your back pocket, and take them with you. And you can't do that with a Robert Jordan book or Erickson or anything like that. They would pull your pants down.
Oh yeah. I do think it's kind of funny that we talk about how these fantasy books are getting longer, and everyone talks about attention spans getting smaller. It's just going the opposite way.
Yeah, it's interesting conundrum.
Interesting. Yeah. Interesting topic for sure. Yeah, we'll have to ask one of our fantasy writing friends about that, about the size. If there's an expectation of a certain size, I wonder if there is or not. But like I said, Jared, it might take that long to build a whole new world from scratch. There's a lot.
Or I mean, not everybody's like not everybody's at Guin. She's a master, unbelievable writer. So I can see her being able to do it in 200 pages, and make it really great. But a lot of people were also trying to copy Tolkien. And even though I think the individual books for Lord of the Rings was maybe they were 400, I think. I'm not sure. I don't remember.
About 400.
But he did originally write it to be one book, and that was his intention.
Yes.
So that would be a doorstopper. And so maybe in the impetus to the effort to imitate him, that's what led to longer books. I don't know. I'm just throwing stuff out there.
Could be. I think that we were thinking about this a bit, is that when we talk to people who read similar books to us, because we find common ground in the books that we love. And so within fantasy communities, of which I've been part for the longest, it's not so unusual to read 3 900-page books in 3 consecutive months. It's fine. I mean, I'm thinking of the Robin Hobb Live Ship Traders trilogy, for example. If somebody schedules a read along, let's say Ship of Magic January, Mad Ship February, Ship of Destiny March, it's not unheard of, let's say. But if we move even to, let's say, I won't go into the classics, but let's go into contemporary literary fiction with speculative elements. House of Leaves. After you do a House of Leaves read along, nobody would expect you to do another book like House of Leaves in the next month.
Yeah.
It's very, very unusual. Very, very unusual. So it's almost like a matter of, I won't say pride, but yes, there's definitely a matter of showing that, for example, Luminaries, which was the Booker winner for 2013, I think it's 800 or something pages. It mimics this 19th century structure. Or I think it's 900 pages actually. But anyway, so when people say, I read the Luminaries, and it's like, oh, that's a big book. And in fantasy, it's like, yeah, you read 900 pages. As what Steve was saying, now read the next book. Because you read 900 pages is not the end of the story. It's the
prologue.
A particular installment. Prologue. Hilarious. But yeah, so maybe it's a different, the mindset is a bit different. I think that literary fiction people find that disorienting in a similar way as if we were to read literary fiction all the time. Might find, I don't know, maybe it's a bit wanting in terms of detail. Maybe, I don't know. For example, a lot of things don't get told. A lot of things don't get, and that's true for fantasy also. Even in a very long fantasy novel, there is a lot to speculate and a lot that doesn't get resolved
Sure.
even then. But maybe the scale is different.
Yeah.
Maybe that's another thing. Or just as what Jared said, the whole machinery that it takes to construct a secondary world and to introduce an element of believability in the reader just using words so that they don't read it and go, this
Yeah.
is ridiculous, is
Yeah, right.
tremendous.
Yeah, that's a
Is
good point.
tremendous.
Yeah. That it.
So maybe it's different expectations, different, because I would definitely attest to the fact that I'm primarily used to reading novels, and I think even reading a novella or reading a short story collection requires a different attuning of, at least it required for me, my brain, to appreciate that in a short story collection, I cannot use the same technique that I use in a novel. That I needed to train myself to be able to read short stories after reading long novels for a lengthy period. And I was wondering, maybe that's true for genres as well. Maybe we need to train our brain a bit to read horror, just as we need to train to read fantasy, epic fantasy, to read literary fiction. I'm not saying it in a gatekeeping sort of way at all. I just mean that maybe it takes a bit of time, and that's where maybe keeping your mind open and
That's it.
asking the help of some friendly people.
Well, that's it. I think
Might.
the open mind comment is key. I think the more open your mind, I think it would be easier to make any of those adjustments. The more open your mind is.
Yeah, I definitely think there's something to be said about kind of training your brain, because I know that when I first got into fantasy, I struggled to keep up more than I do now with characters and world building and histories and locations and distances between locations and all that. So I think it does take a little bit of time to kind of get your footing, and it does take effort to whichever genre it is. I think it takes a little bit of time to just kind of find your footing and find a way that it makes sense to you, that you can keep up, especially in a genre like fantasy that's can be very dense and can be very it takes mental energy. Like something like Wars of Blood and Shadow. I mean, I read a 20 pages and it's like my brain hurts because it's like, because it's like so thick. Like it's and I mean that in a good way, but it takes a lot of, like Malazan. Like when I read Malazan, I read a chapter and my brain's like begging for a break, because it's a lot. Like there's a lot of things there's character names and past events, and there's a lot. It's just so packed.
Yeah, and with writers like that, they're very literary too as well.
Yeah.
So it's not just the fact that you're learning a bunch of new stuff and a bunch of new terms that are not of our world. You're also getting a very literary package in the mix.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to ask, because both of you mentioned something which made me curious. So, Jared, you said you used to read a lot of history books, and this is something amazing to me because I do not retain. I've tried reading some nonfiction history books, and it's very, very difficult for me to retain things, even with a period I'm relatively familiar with. And so I wanted to ask, and Steve, similar question for you regarding House of Leaves. So I wanted to ask both of you that when you used to approach, like Jared, you were familiar with history books, and Steve, you were familiar with horror. When you approach a book which is a bit offbeat in that line, like say you read a history book which was written thematically instead of chronologically, or Steve, you approached House of Leaves, did it take you by shock? Did you need to acclimatize a bit that, hey, this is not usually what I read, I need to adjust? Or was it easier for you because you read the genre a lot?
Go ahead, Jared.
I don't know. It's been a long time. I've been around a long time, so Yeah. I mean, history was my major. It was one of my dual major in college. So, you get a lot of stuff pounded into you about how to read the stuff when you're going through, college classes. So, yeah, I don't know. It's not much of an adjustment for me nowadays, but I've also done a lot of reading over the past 40 years. So, you get used to that.
Maybe if I make the question something like, you read a lot of fantasy. When you read something like Spear Cuts Through Water, does it require a bit of adjustment on your part, or are you still able to go with the flow?
I was able to go with it. I've heard that other people say that they had trouble getting into his style.
Yeah,
not just you, other people too. They had the trouble getting into
Fair
his
enough.
style because of the point of view, the second person and the first person point of view, and the switching back and forth of it all the time. I don't know. I saw a couple reviews, so I was kind of expecting it, and it didn't bother me at all. But that's so. Back to your question. I don't know. I guess I have to think about that. Okay. So science fiction. I wasn't a huge science fiction reader. Other than stuff that's more fantasy like Dune. But like some of the stuff we've been reading for the sci-fi masterworks actually took a little bit of an adjustment for me because those were thought experiments, what they call thought experiments, where they had a science fiction idea and they kind of just wrote about it, and they tried to put a little bit of a story around it, but mostly it was about the idea. And so I had to get used to that and not worry about plot and character so much, but once you do, though, it's now it's a piece of cake. So.
Well, for me with House of Leaves, it definitely took me a while to adjust.
What is House of Leaves? Just
it's hard to explain. It's a one of a kind. Have you read House of Leaves, Paromita?
I have read the first 30 pages.
Okay. So it's basically there's two different stories going on, but as you read the story, there's footnotes in the book as you read it. So you'll be reading about something and then it'll reference an article. So you look at the footnotes and you go to the last, I think almost the last half of the book is the index. So you can go and you read the article that it's referencing in the back of the book. Then you read that for 50 pages and you go back to the story. And the story jumps back and forth. So there's letters that are in the index. There's like coded messages in the letters. There's different timelines. There's the way that they use text. They have pages that the text is printed in like different designs, and it's a very unique book. It's but it's weird because you could sit down for an hour or for 2 hours and read, and you could read, let's say 70 pages, but in your page count you only read 20. So it's really strange. It's a lot. Some people even they just read the story. They don't use the footnotes or the additional information. It's kind of sad that people do that. But I think it is it's one of those love or hate type of books, and some people think it's pretentious and some people think it's brilliant. So it's one of those. It's one of those where you it seems like everyone lands on one side or another. It's a very strong opinions on that one, but I think it's great. I think it must have taken years to put that thing together. I think it's really cool. But again, not everyone likes it. But yeah, it did take me a while to didn't even know how to read it. It's really weird. It's strange. I had to like look up and find help on how to read it, because it's very different. It's very unique.
I know some people that just can't read comics. They just like they just can't do the words and how the word balloons go and stuff, and they have a hard time with it.
Yeah, it's kind of Of all the formats to be intimidated by, it seems like a weird one to be intimidated by to me, because it's like the easiest one to get into. But you get a lot of help with all the art, so it's fills in a lot.
Yeah. Cool. I do have to go make some steak now.
Oh no. Okay. All right. Well, cool. Well, thanks for coming by, Joe.
All right. Thank you. I'll talk to you later.
It's always a pleasure.
Right. Bye, Paromita.
Bye.
All right. So I just have what I've been reading, or trying to read. Did you read Truth of Crowns, Paromita?
I did.
So I did finish that one this month. And it is lots and lots of tragedy in that one. Lots of death.
It is. So I think the cascade at the end was level 1 and up. I liked it, but the author said that this is book 1 of a 5-book series, and as I was getting to the end, I was like, oh my god, I have to reread this thing before whenever I get to the finale. So I did read it, but I was not as anchored in it. There were some very good moments, but I was not as anchored in it as I was in, let's say, a Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
It had a lot of switching of POVs and things like that. But yeah, I liked it, but wasn't a immediate new favorite, is how I would say.
That's fair. Yeah, that did cross my mind too, because it's a very thick book. So as I was getting towards the latter, towards the end, I thought, well, I'm gonna have to reread this when book 2 comes, because I won't remember it.
Yeah.
But I did. It was a lot more death and tragedy than I was expecting. I was expecting more of a traditional fantasy type of story, but it surprised me.
No, I knew, because Carl said he loves George R.R. Martin and he loves Robin Hobb. He loves Robin Hobb more than George R.R. Martin. And so I'm not. No, I won't go that far. But I mean, Robin Hobb is like another goat for him. So I was like, yeah, I do agree that the intensity, like as you said, that at the end, that cascade was a lot. It was a lot. The final third, maybe not the final third, final 4th or 5th, final quarter or final 20% was it escalated.
Oh yeah,
quite a bit. That was done very well. I just wish there was a little bit less number of POVs.
Yeah.
It got a bit too diffuse at time for me, but that could just be a very personal reader thing.
Yeah, I did have there. I think this is something I struggle with fantasy in general, but just keeping up with all the different POVs, and because it's hard to keep track of them sometimes. Just too many.
That's why I say A Song of Ice and Fire is about my limit, and that's only, I think, because he gradually increases it. Book 1 is more or less Starks versus Lannisters, and then he introduces the factions. So you are anchored in those 2, and then you have to add 3 more. Okay, it's easier to remember. I think that technique is very, very clever. Whereas anything which introduces everything together, I'm like, who are all these people? Who are you all? Do I care?
Yeah,
Probably
like,
not.
Who's gonna survive? But.
True, or even worse. I mean, this happened to me with Malazan. Somebody died. I'm like, okay, who are you? Oopsie.
Yeah, it's hard. I think it's harder to get invested in them when there's so many of them.
For me personally, yes. That is
Yeah.
an issue.
And I did.
So what
I
else?
did read, or we did finish the Warrior Prophet, and we're reading Thousandfold Thought now. And Thousandfold Thought, there was a lot in the Warrior Prophet that I feel like I missed, or I didn't catch the first time. I don't know if you would catch it if you hadn't read the series already, but the Thousandfold Thought is a lot more plot than I remember it being.
Yeah. It's traditional battle, those quarters. I did think, with the caveat that I did not enjoy the series very much, I did think The Warrior Prophet was the best book
That seems to be the consensus.
in the
I think
trilogy.
most people think that's the best one.
Thousandfold Thought, without spoiling anything, the ending is brilliant, but the whole book is, considering the expectations that Backer himself sets with the second installment, it's a bit, Backer, why are you doing this? Why are you giving us so much military fantasy when you have shown that you can do good theming? What Warrior Prophet does, that interplay. Impactful scenes, along with also, yes, there is action, but it's a good blend of everything, and he switches between the locations, the POVs. I think he also gives dialogue to people very cleverly. In Thousandfold Thought, it was a lot more, as you said. For me, I wouldn't even say plot, because for me it was action, and usually action bores me.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, me too. I'm not a big fan.
Fair enough.
Not a big fan of action.
Fair enough.
But speaking of what I am a fan of is Annihilation. We read that for the speculative speculations.
All-time favorite.
So good.
All-time favorite. It's brilliant, and it just works as a standalone. Brilliant. I love Vandermeer's writing. One thing is, people say they compare him to Lovecraft, but for me, it's just its own thing, and it's very, very beautiful. It just worked for me, and first person is so difficult to do. First person and unnamed.
Yeah.
I thought that was very clever. Very, very clever. So, yeah, very big fan.
Did you read the...
But I'm so happy.
I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, I've read every... so I wanted to say, the consensus seems to be that most people liked it. The people who were doing...
We all loved it, yeah.
Yay! That's delightful. I did read the whole trilogy, yes.
We read the first 5 chapters, and I think it's... I don't want to say it's as good as the first one, but it's really good.
The second book is nothing like the first, and then the third book is what I'll say is, because you have to experience the book yourself, the titles are very meaningful of the books. Annihilation, then Authority, and then Acceptance. And I am just so hyped because he's writing a 4th installment, Absolution, and he's turned it into his editor. So we should be getting it. If it's bad, I'm going to cry. I will literally cry, because this is my favorite science fiction series.
It's really, really good. I'm surprised how good it is. And I'm also bummed about the movie, because it was not a good...
The last part. Yeah, the last part. Up to, even, I would say, even up to where the physicist, who is this quiet lady, where she takes a particular... up to that was also okay. But once they go into a particular structure, and then the ending... this is my friend who recommended this book to me, The Purple Bookworm. This is her favorite trilogy, and she's so mad about that movie. She was like, Paromita, you're going to hate it. I'm like, I want to watch it and then hate it. I was very mad.
Yeah, it's really disappointing. Really disappointing.
It is. As an adaptation, it's disappointing. As a movie, I think it's okay. It's not bad. But if you know the book, then it's like, come on, really? Yeah,
as a missed opportunity. I wish they would have made it into the first movie, the first book, and then gone from there. But I think it'd be hard to adapt. It'd be hard to adapt that.
second one would be boring, I think. No?
It could be.
It'll be.
It may work it more as like a TV series to have it like 3
Yeah.
seasons of it or 4 seasons now. But I think a TV series might work.
True.
Yeah. But too bad. It's
True.
too bad. We did finish Your Stories of Your Life and Others, and I despised that book.
I read that. Oh my God.
So bad.
Oh my God. I agree with, again, my friend Purple Book. She warned me not to read it. She was like, Arrival is good, but if you didn't like the end of Arrival, that is told at the beginning of the story. So, of story of your life, the book, the story. And she's like, you're going to hate it even more. It's like, oh dear me, I do not like this. But also fundamentally, I mean, one thing which I don't want to be too gatekeepy about this. Did it feel to you at times like this is not really science fiction?
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. So
it was.
Yeah, that was. Yeah. Did anybody like it, or did anybody vibe
I think
with
Varsha vibed with it the most because she's like a numbers person, like a math and numbers, and a lot of that just went over my head. It just wasn't interesting. It's and a lot of the stories are 60, 70 pages when they could have been 20.
12? Oh, I was going to say.
Well,
okay. You're kinder than me. I'm like 12.
It's really frustrating.
Yeah.
Let's see. Yeah, thankfully we finished it because that was rough. I read The Fade Out by Brubaker and Sean Phillips. Really great graphic novel. Really great book. I loved it. And so now we're also reading The Big Book of Science Fiction. It's a big... actually, Vandermeer is the...
Oh, it's Jeff Vandermeer and Anne Vandermeer.
Beautiful book, too. It's giant.
Nice.
Giant book.
Beautiful.
Really, really good really nice presentation. Not easy to carry, though. And, of course, I think we're 4 volumes away from finishing Berserk. Or catching up.
Oh, wow.
So.
Yeah, catching up.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's keeping me busy. As far as TV, I did finish Yellowstone. Have you seen Yellowstone? Probably haven't.
No, I have not.
It was better than I expected. I didn't really expect much, but it was. I think it explores the kind of progress and technology and there's in a nutshell it's about a family who owns a large portion of land in Montana, and they live the kind of the cowboy lifestyle, and they have livestock and there's people trying to buy the land or trying to commandeer it, and it's them trying to trying to keep their family history and their land, and they're also kind of they're not always very nice people either. So it's a nice. I feel like you're. At what point do you give up and give in, and at what point do you, keep fighting and keep your legacy? I guess so. It was more thought provoking than I thought. And there's a character that is one of my favorite characters, Beth. She's a great character. This really brutal and and also there's a prequel called 1883. I believe it's 1883 or 1882. And kind of tells the story of how the family ended up there, and I haven't finished it yet, but it's pretty brutal. It's very unforgiving of that, and kind of presents that time period in the West, in the Old West. We also watched Blue Eye Samurai for the podcast.
Okay.
Have you seen that one?
No. TV shows, I'm very, 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 very behind. I've seen nothing other than Black Sails 1 episode. But I've got Severance and Dark on my list.
Dark is really, really good. Really, really good.
Another endorsement.
Really, really good. It's one of my favorites. And of course, True Detective. But that does a whole nother topic. Pretty disappointing. Yeah.
Oh, really? I thought there were a lot of like it was like the mystery box model, things continuously building up, building up, building up. Was the resolution not
No,
satisfying?
I think from what I understand is that the writer wrote a movie called Night Country, and she brought it to HBO, and HBO said, we want to turn this into a True Detective TV series. So they brought in elements from the previous seasons to make it like callbacks to make it work. When it's an anthology series, you don't really get callbacks from the seasons. They're their own thing. So it just didn't really work. A lot of missed opportunities, a lot of
Also, movie padding out. I mean, what happened? Like, let's say what happened to the Hobbit trilogy, a teeny tiny book, and they tried to make 3 movies. Similarly, if somebody has a movie script, 2 hours, 2.5, let's say 3 hours is a very long movie. But even then, that's 3 episodes.
Yeah.
And I guess what, it's 8 or
6.
6? I don't know how many is it. 6, but still, that's double. So that's a lot of padding.
A lot. Yeah, and you could, looking back, you can see where they added in extra things, that they added in extra plot elements and different. You could tell where they just threw it in just to,
not organically. No. Just didn't
work.
So will you be continuing with the next season, or?
I guess I will, just because I'm hoping it'll get better. Okay. What I'm hoping is that she'll write it from the expectation of it being a series, and maybe not a 2-hour movie that gets stretched into 6. So maybe it'll it'll benefit from that. I'm hoping.
Yeah, I hope so too. Yeah. It's always, I mean, I'm a bit of a completionist in the sense, if I get 3 or 4 seasons into a show, then usually I finish it out. But so I hope it's good for everyone watching.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.
Definitely.
What else do you have? So you're doing the Southern Reach, the other 2, and then Wars of Light and Shadow, and the Prince of Nothing, of course. Is there anything else you have sort of long-term project?
I think we're going to, after we finish the Southern Reach, I think we're going to start Children of Time. I think that's the plan, but it's all up to Varsha.
Children of Time.
She's the boss.
Fair enough.
So we'll see.
She's the boss.
But I think that's all the series we have planned.
That's nice. I want to do something for just get into more horror, but also more interesting type of horror. So I was looking into weird fiction and those kind of things. Michael Sisko seems interesting, but I don't understand his books. Is this normal?
Yeah, it's kind of normal. Yeah, he's brilliant though. Yeah.
Okay. He is brilliant. It's like China Mieville is another person. I mean, Michael Sisko is probably also an academic, or he teaches something. But anyway, you can make out that he's very smart, but I don't understand what he's trying to say in his book. I read only one. I read Divinity Student, but he has one called Unlanguage, which I really want to try.
Yeah.
But he's not really horror, is he? He's
more weird fiction. Yeah, there's a lot of weird fiction out there. I'm trying to think who else is. There's some really weird fiction out there. But yeah, he's different. He's brilliant though. Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. One author my friends really like, but I could not get into is I read one story and one novel, Stephen Graham Jones. And the novel that I read was The Only Good Indians, and my friends loved it. And in the beginning, I was really liking it, but then I got bored.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of slashers, and that the end just didn't make sense to me.
Yeah, the end is what killed it. Like that, a particular game onwards, I was just
it felt like a different book. It just felt like it just didn't fit. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But his short story was brilliant. It was one involving a rabbit. It was very good. It's a brilliant short. So I had high expectations. Another author I'm curious about, but I've been told not to touch, because again, I read a short story by this author, Jack Ketchum. So the short story I read was The Box. The novel I'm interested in is The Girl Next Door, but I looked it up and I've been told not to touch it.
It is.
I think I should follow this
It
advice.
is. Well, I won't touch that one because it's based on. I guess it's on true events.
It's based on real life. Yeah,
and it's. I hear it's awful.
And it's. I read Peter Straub, Ghost Story. Very good book. Really liked. I mean, these are some authors that I've been trying. I tried Thomas Ligotti. He has like this Penguin classic anthology. Not for me. Not for me. Too weird. So is there someone you would recommend? Is short stories or something which you think I might vibe with?
Maybe Daniel Barnett, The Nightmareland Chronicles. That might work for you.
Okay. Yeah, I can always give it a try. Because again, horror, I'm very much a clean slate. I don't know much.
Yeah, so he's
always happy
that might
to
work.
try.
The trying to think short story collections. There's a lot of short story collections out there. Let me think of.
Yeah, I'll look up. I've been looking up some stuff as well. But also, if you want to read the Mariana Enriquez one, let me know.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we can just have a thread in the forum and chat.
In fact, I have it pulled up here. So.
Voices We Lost in the Fire. Both are very good, but I think Voices We Lost in the Fire is spectacular. Spectacular because, as I said, she pulls in a lot of imagery, and you just know there's real life events behind it. It's clever, but I don't know. It may click, it may not click because some people seem to hate it. Like horror seems to have this vibe. I see a lot of books where, like Michael Sisko, it's like this guy is like genius, and then some people are like, what the hell is this? Through this book, it's very, very poor. Kind of like what you said with House of Leaves.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. There's a lot of subgenres in horror that have their own like subsection of fans, like splatterpunk or extreme or weird.
Can't stand. I mean, I won't be able to take it. Weird, I would be able to take. I think psychological horror, atmospheric horror, all that. I think I would be able to take. People thought that I would like break with Pet Sematary, but I was like, no, I really like this. It's great. They're like, wow, People thought I would break with the alien one particular scene. Like, she's not going to. Like, no. And Hereditary, my friend was scared. I was like, I loved it. It's that balance of is it psychiatric or is it supernatural? I really, really like when he did that. Because I was like, this is psychiatric, this is psychiatric, this is psychiatric. I could rationalize it almost quite a bit. So it's a very good movie. Did you like Midsommar?
I did. There's a lot. There's a lot in that movie there's a lot in it that I didn't notice the first time. A lot of
Oh, that's true for Hereditary as well. Because I watched it a second time. My mom was watching and I was watching from behind her. Oh my God. There is this scene which two different people, I think you also pointed it out. You all pointed it out to me. It's a particular apparition which is present. It's not an apparition actually, but okay. When a particular boy wakes up towards the end, and my God, that was brilliant. That was such a brilliant scene. And there's so much detail that went into how he constructed the movie. In Midsommar, I don't know. I think it was the violence that really got me. There's a particular scene with a machete where sort of that was very tough. I really liked the decision to alternate between the machete, what was happening with the machete, and with our protagonist's face. Very, very brilliant. And I see what he was going for, but it was just too much for me. Towards the end, I was like, stop.
Yeah.
But very good. I would say, I mean, in terms of direction, it's very good. But tell me an example of something that you don't notice unless you rewatch.
There was one scene towards the beginning that our main character is sitting in I think they're sitting in a field, and in the background there's another character that's already been dead that is in the background.
I don't even. Oh my god, I didn't notice
I didn't
that
either until somebody told me. There was a lot of discussion over how the character ended up, or the death of her parents. I guess we can, minor spoilers, but her parents die, and there's you can kind of, was that planned? Did the
exactly. I did wonder that. I did wonder that a lot. I couldn't rationalize it, but I think there was something with the artwork on some of the, which it was a bit, I don't know, and it's also a sort of maybe a false continuation of Hereditary, where we don't know what are the machinations that are going on in the background. And so when that happened initially, I was like, oh my god. But then I was like, is this step one in a horribly convoluted recruitment drive? So it was he messes with your mind. The third one, I'm his third film, which I have on my list, is Beau is Afraid. I don't know. I'm so scared.
Yeah, I want to see it.
Because the actor is my favorite actor, one of my favorite actors. I loved him in Joker.
Oh, he's great in Joker. Yeah, I love Joker.
Brilliant.
So good.
Me too.
I'm worried about the second one, but I love Joker.
I'm also terrified. I almost don't want to watch it because I'm like, what if they mess it up? What if they mess it up? We didn't need this.
We didn't need it. It should have just been its own thing. We didn't need it.
Anyway.
Yeah.
How is Beau is Afraid? Is it
I haven't seen it yet. I need to watch it.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah, we'll have to figure that one out, because I've been wanting to see it. I'm almost afraid to watch it because I don't want it to be bad.
I understand. Yeah. I understand. When somebody has been, they've just had a home run, you don't want to be disappointed. I have that very much, very, very much. I'm like, just please no. When it's bad, it's just the saddest thing available. I do want to watch The Lighthouse, which is, I believe, by the director of The Witch. The Witch was, oh my god, but it was a very good film. I have to. It's not my thing, but separately speaking, it's a very good film.
Yeah, I haven't seen The Lighthouse, but I own it, so I think we're discussing it in a few weeks. Yeah,
you're discussing it. I know. I'll try to join if I don't get spooked out.
It'll be a good one.
But I've been told I can handle stuff now because, apparently Hereditary means I can handle stuff.
Yeah, I love Hereditary. So good.
It's a very good movie.
Really good. It's definitely sets the bar high for other movies.
Definitely. I agree.
Yeah.
And also performance-wise, she didn't get an award. I was so surprised. Who did better than her in her two? It's brilliant. I mean, for the dinner scene alone. No, the dinner scene and a particular there's a scene where she's in a particular meeting and just micro expressions. Everybody did brilliantly, but she is star.
She's really, really good. I'm surprised she didn't get even nominated. I don't think she even was nominated. I don't think so.
Seriously? So there were 5 people who acted better than her in Hereditary. Interesting. I'm going to watch these films and rant about it on the forum. New project.
I don't. Oh, she didn't get nominated, an Oscar nomination for it.
Well, I found my new project. I'm going to watch the 5 movies that did get nominated for Best Actress and then rant about it.
Yeah. There's a lot of articles about why she deserved a nomination but didn't get one. Wow.
Okay. Please don't tell me it's related to genre stuff that, it's a horror film and so.
It might be. Yeah, it's too bad.
Really? Really? such a good horror. I mean, this is what horror should be. It's absolutely masterful.
She did receive a Critics' Choice Award for...
Yeah, that's like consolation prize. She should get the main prize, in my opinion. I would have to say what the other nominees are.
Yeah. I have a hard time believing that they're as good. And some other nominations for other smaller awards, but yeah, the major one, she didn't get one, which is criminal.
Yeah, honestly.
Yeah. But thanks for coming by and hanging out. Tell me about your month.
Yes, it was a lot of fun.
It's always a pleasure. So anyone wanting to contact you, where can they find you?
The best place to find me is on the Page Chewing forum. I post there quite a bit, and I also log in quite a bit, so I can be found there very easily.
Awesome. Yeah, you can find me there too, and hope everyone has a great weekend, and we'll talk to everyone soon.
Bye.